So welcome to our exclusive interview with Tetiana Alexandrova, who is the CEO of Subsense, a company that is pioneering a revolutionary non-surgical nanoparticle-based brain-computer interface, or BCI, as many of us are familiar with. Now, it promises to transform the way we interact with technology and treat neurological conditions. Now, I was very excited about this crossover between biotech and neurotech when I read about it in our publication. And obviously, Subsense is one of those companies that's really kind of getting us to the point where we're starting to realize what Ray Kurzweil was talking about. Of course, that the singularity is kind of getting nearer. So with 17 million in seed funding, Subsense is actually poised to make some significant strides in breakthrough neuroscience. So today we're going to delve into clinical applications, the company's ambitious roadmap, and what we might be able to see in one day is this really unprecedented human interface between the brain and neurotech. And of course, Tatiana is going to be joining us today. So hey, Tatiana, how are you doing?
Hi, Phil. Very nice. Thank you very much. Thank you for having me today.
Oh, well, as I say, Tatiana, really excited about the work that you're doing. And of course, I guess it would be good to rewind back to the beginning and say, look, let's get a very basic explainer of your technology, because it is very different. It's very different to what we've seen in the marketplace with very invasive neural interfaces. So what's at the core of the technology?
Of course, yeah. Thank you for asking. So we develop, as you already mentioned, we develop brain-computer interface, and it's based on nanoparticles. And we create two different types of nanoparticles, one for reading and one for stimulation. And the reason why we develop nanoparticles is because I'm in the industry for 7 years already. I developed brain-computer interface for 7 years. And I realized that with a completely non-invasive brain-computer interface, we cannot bring to the life the device that would be able to do something that Ray Kurzweil are talking about, and something that we can see in the sci-fi movies. But with the invasive brain-computer interface, it's still a huge limitation for a wide audience because it's still a surgery. And we were trying to find the way how to bring to the life the device that would be the same with the same accuracy that invasive brain-computer interface, but non-surgical. That's why we developed nanoparticles.
Yeah, great. Well, of course, I'd love to delve in, as we will do later in our conversation, about how you're doing that. But obviously, you mentioned that you've got two types, I guess. So what we've been seeing a lot of is kind of like motor cortex, which is, reading signals. But it seems to me that you've got two approaches, which is really, really fascinating. So maybe let's talk a little bit about the healthcare applications, because we'll get into the future stuff in a moment. But how do you envisage Subsense's technology impacting treatment of neurological conditions like Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, epilepsy, and so on? That's the sort of basis that you're moving your clinical pathway on. Is that right?
Yeah, is it correct? This is our first visible application that we're planning to execute, and basically the first result we're planning to show in mice within 2 years, actually even less. We are planning to show how we can treat symptoms of Parkinson, maybe even Alzheimer. And the way how it works, so as you maybe know right now, sometimes people use deep brain stimulation for treating the symptoms, and basically our nanoparticles can be a replacement in some way, not completely, but in some way we can replace deep brain stimulation, so neurosurgical needed. And basically these nanoparticles are coming into your brain through your nose or through your blood, so it's much more safer than any other invasive and surgical approaches.
Yeah, so I guess that's really interesting. So you mentioned it goes through the blood or through the nose. Now, you're able to go through the blood-brain barrier, right? Which is a big challenge, of course. And I guess that this is maybe down to the scale of your nanoparticles, or what's the breakthrough that you're working towards for actually getting the nanoparticles into the system in the first place?
Of course, yeah, this is a brilliant question. And basically, as I said, there's two approach how nanoparticles can get into your brain. First, through the nose, and second, through the blood. And we are working right now on two directions. Through our best case scenario, if we can get them through the nose, because if we're getting them through the nose, we're skipping the brain-blood barrier.
Oh, right.
Yeah, because nanoparticles are coming through olfactory nerve directly from your nose to the brain, to the olfactory bulb. And from there, it's traveling around the brain. this is our main goal. And talking about skipping the BBB, the going through the BBB, if it's coming through the blood, there's already some researchers that we're based on that it is possible, and we can definitely do that. But our primary goal is to let them go through your nose to skip the BBB.
Got it. So once they're in the brain, I guess that when I looked at your device, which I saw I would call it an array, right? So you've got sensors sit around the head. Are they directing the nanoparticles as well as reading signals back from them? And how does that work?
Yeah, of course. So as I said in the beginning, there are two completely different nanoparticles and they work completely different. Let's start with some that do neuro reading. And this is a plasmonic nanoparticles. And these plasmonic nanoparticles, they consist of a thin layer of the gold and also the electrochromic polymer. So basically how it works, imagine that we have a device on our head, and this device are sending near infrared light that can go through your scalp and get to the nanoparticles, our plasmonic nanoparticles. And how it usually works, these plasmonic nanoparticles are sending the signal back with a certain frequency. But if next to these plasmonic nanoparticles, there is the neuron that has activity next to the plasmonic nanoparticles, the frequency of the signal is changing. And basically our device are catching back the different signal, which means that next to this plasmonic nanoparticles is a neural activity. That's how we know where exactly it is. So this is for neuro reading. And for neurostimulation, it's completely different types of nanoparticles and technology. It's called magnetoelectrical nanoparticles, and it based on piezoelectric effect. So basically, we're stimulating our nanoparticles with a magnetic fields, and these nanoparticles deforming. And with this deformation, it produces electrical field that is affecting the neurons that is located next to these nanoparticles.
Wow!
This is how
So,
it works.
so effectively, you've got a read and write system, right? So you can run both through the system, which is really fascinating. So when you mentioned obviously being able to work in neural conditions, okay, so you've got this concept obviously initially, and I guess everybody's got to get their therapeutic pathway. So whether you're choosing neurological disorders or maybe even as you've identified some more complex disorders like perhaps restoring vision or hearing, presumably what you've got to be able to do is you've got to be able to locate the nanoparticles in the right area of the brain and understand what signals you're reading to then be able to understand what signals you should be writing, of course, which is very complicated. So I guess, have you done any work in this space now just to translate this theory into some level of practical demonstration of the concepts?
Well, we're planning to start this work very soon because, as I said, this is something that we need to show within a year and a half with mice. And this is the most challenging thing right now is to create this nanoparticle that's going to work, because everything that based on what kind of signal we're reading and what kind of signal we need to send. If we're talking about neurological diseases, it's more or less more understandable area than our nanoparticles itself, because basically what we're doing right now, it's called technology transfer. So we are working with a couple of famous and well-known amazing universities and laboratories, and 70% of the work that we're doing, we're getting the patents and their previous work all together and produce from this one technology.
Got it. Well, that's great. I mean, obviously, collaboration of such a complex field is bringing together, the hardware and the software, and of course the understanding of how you're analyzing the data. So presumably, when you're looking in your R&D processes and you're going into your mammal studies, presumably, will you be using things like real-time brain scanning and so on to understand what you're looking for and how you're bridging between the read and the write signals that you're demonstrating?
Yes, 100%. And basically the thing, how you describe it, that to send the signal back, we need to understand first what we're reading, right? And that's exactly how it works. It's a closed loop. So imagine there is a brain and there is a signal, and we're reading the signal, we decode it, we're trying to understand what does it mean. And then after understanding this, we're sending it back everything that we want to send back. This is 100% closed loop. That's why we're developing both at the same time, for reading and for stimulating, because just for stimulating, like, you just don't know what to stimulate, right? If you're not reading it correctly.
Yeah, yeah. And of course, I guess that there are some choices you're going to have to start making as a company, right? Which is maybe what is your therapeutic approval pathway? What are the areas you're going to focus on? And I guess that really, you've got such a broad potential for what you're doing. Do you see yourself as being like a platform company? Or do you see that you'll be choosing your therapeutic pathway and controlling all of that? It's interesting to just see because obviously there's some very, very intriguing things that you're working on. So you're not going to be able to eat the whole elephant in one go, right?
Of
So
course.
interested to know how you're going to approach that.
Of course, yeah, 100%. So our main approach, our main goal, like a big goal that we're focusing on, is to create safe and efficient brain-computer interface for healthy individuals. Something that's exactly Ray Kurzweil are talking about. It's a complete synergy between technology and human being. And I envision it as imagine that you can hack your brain. You're basically not your brain or like chemicals in your brain controlling you, but you're controlling them. And that's that we're trying to focus on. And of course and this is some way, it will take some time. And
Of
of
course.
course, on the way there, we will create a certain medical applications, as I said, treating different symptoms of neurodegenerative diseases, restore vision function, motor function. So we're starting from a medical application, but our end goal, our main goal, is basically to change the way how we interact with the digital world completely. So we don't have anymore any phones, any laptops, like we just have it in our head, and we can communicate wirelessly.
Yeah, which of course I guess that's one definition of the singularity, right? And of course, the world is blowing up everywhere with AI at the moment. So I'm guessing that there's a significant AI element in the way that you're looking at developing the platform, right? Because I guess you've got a lot of signals coming in and you need the facility to be able to, I guess, really use AI to help you with all of that processing to get to the point where you know what you're reading and writing.
Exactly, 100%. So we use AI in many different ways, starting from decoding the signals, as you just mentioned, and you obviously need to use that. But we use it for some other ways that is not that obvious. So first of all, we have a special project that Phil, you're the first who knew about that. Besides of our team, we are using generative AI to create the new nanostructures, chemical structures that nobody knew about before. And this is very, very exciting project, like my personal baby, because I really believe that we can change the speed of development significantly, because generative AI can help us to create something completely new. And basically what we're trying to do, we're we're making the laboratory in the artificial environment, and we can iterate much more faster than we can do it in the real life. So we're combining two different approach, the usual one with the real lab and the artificial one, and we will see what happens next. It's our like special project, but I'm very excited about that, and I think
Yeah,
it
I
will be
mean, yeah.
significant impact.
Me too. And I guess the thing is that, you've just raised your capital. I'm intrigued, Tatiana, to know, was your pitch based on the clinical applications, or was it kind of adventurous investors that went, screw it, let's go for the singularity?
We're talking about singularity, 100%.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, that's great because that's very encouraging because there's a lot of very brave capital out there that obviously wants to back really exciting companies. And of course, if you're in a position where you're picking off, therapeutic pathways for diseases that can help people, I guess, you can spin those out and let other people take that while you're moving towards a new future, right?
100%. That's our plan. That basically the core team will move very fast, as fast as we can, to the like singularity goal, right? But it doesn't mean that we will not create medical applications. Of course, we will, but it probably will be a spin-off of our company that will develop like a certain medical application. But we are raising and we're doing the big thing. And another thing, how we use the generative AI, it's connected with this singularity thing, because basically what we want to do is to merge our brain with artificial intelligence. Imagine that you can have the direct access to the all knowledge of the world. That's exactly what we want to have.
Yeah, and I guess I'm cognizant about some of the things that I've seen in the journey. Like I remember watching some videos of people that were in MRIs and they were asked to visualize something with their brains, and then it was possible to be able to demonstrate that they were thinking of a butterfly or a house or something. You got those sort of visual feedbacks, and of course, this is probably feels like relatively simple for where you're going to be going next with the way that you're looking at it. And when you look at some of the books and you look at the concepts of maybe even with a device and system like yours that you could even have telepathy, for example. I mean, the roadmap is pretty wild, right? So I guess you just got to get on with it quickly, right? Because the world's waiting for you.
Exactly. Yeah. Thank you. I hope the world is waiting.
I'm
telepathy,
sure they are.
telepathy. Telepathy is a very, like a sci-fi word, but actually it's understandable how we can do that, because if we would be able to read thoughts, basically my device can read my thoughts, send on my device, then on your device, and then send on your brain. So it's kind of even from the science perspective, it's understandable how to achieve that. So I really believe that this telepathy thing, it's going to happen in our lifetime.
Wow, fascinating. And I guess that there are going to be a lot of very interesting regulatory discussions that you're going to be having, right? I mean, not just about product safety, but also privacy and consent, right, in the future. So I guess that's an interesting, perhaps early question for you because you're still working on the tech, right? But I guess your roadmap, which was on your website, is very clear about the timescales that you're shooting for. So have you decided where you're going to point your regulatory pathway yet? What your first application is going to be?
Of course, you would be surprised, but we started to work with regulatory already now.
Wow.
Because even though, like, to go smoother through the regulatory pathway, you need to start as early as possible. And we already started, even though we're working on technology, because basically how the regulatory works in some way, you need to tell them in advance, like, hey, we're building this and this, help us to navigate it more correctly. So we will not stuck for years. We will go it as smooth as possible. So answering on your question, yes, we already started to work with the regulatory pathway. And talking about the first applications, as I said, it would be medical applications for people with special needs and probably people with neurodegenerative diseases.
Yeah, and I guess the future looks very interesting for you. You've raised your capital. I guess that with all of the calls on that capital, you'll probably be raising again soon, right? I guess do you have like a milestone that you're moving towards now as a company to say, okay, our next valuation inflection will be when we get to this point? Will it be the animal studies, or will it be sooner than that, for example?
Yeah, 100%. So as I said in the beginning, our next big milestone, we have a lot of milestones. Our plan is super like divided into different stages. And our big milestone, it's going to happen in the end of 2026, where we need to show how we can read and stimulate the signal in mice and maybe even treat the symptoms of Parkinson or other degenerative disease. We will also have a lot of different like formal stuff that we're going to have, like intellectual property and many other stuff. But this something very visual, feasible and visualable that you can interact with. And after that, we will, as soon as we get that, we will raise a new capital. That's
okay. And I guess, interesting from I spent a lot of my career working in different technologies, software, hardware, all of the things that we're all familiar with. What was the point where you kind of realized that this was the technology configuration that you were going to go for? And was there a kind of a point of realization where you went kind of like, wow, this is going to work. This is going to happen.
Yeah. That's an amazing question. Thank you. So basically, before we fundraise our 17 million round, for a year and a half, we were evaluating this idea. So we talked to almost 100 different experts. And as we talked in the beginning, it's a very multidisciplinary area. It's chemistry, physics, neuroscience, nanoscience, like everything. And we wanted to understand, is it possible or not? Like, aren't we break any physics law or not? And apparently, no, it's possible. It's 100% possible. And with our process of evaluation, we talked to so many brilliant professors, and that's how we found our collaborators in UCSC, in ETH, like best professors in the world who already have a lot of like background IP based on our idea. And then after discussing it with the best experts in this area in the world, we realized, okay, we're gonna do that because we're not breaking any physics law. It's just a matter of time, and we want to be the first.
Yeah, great. Well, Tatiana, it's an absolute pleasure speaking with you today. I mean, we'll be tracking what you guys are doing with great interest, and do please keep us updated on your progress. We'd love to know how it's all going.
100%. Thank you, Phil, so much. I got a lot of pleasure talking to you.
Yeah, great. Well, Tatiana, we'll speak again, and thanks so much for joining us today. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. Bye-bye.